I used to think something was wrong with me. Maybe if I were quieter, more obedient, more like my older sister Danielle, then maybe my mother would look at me with the same warmth she gave her. Maybe she'd say she was proud. Maybe she'd stop calling me a burden. But no matter what I did, it never changed. My name is Elise Monroe, and I grew up in a house where silence cut deeper than words. My mother, Judith, wasn't abusive in the way people think. She didn't scream or throw things. She didn't drink or vanish for days. No, she was worse. She watched me with cold eyes and a tired sigh, like she was waiting for me to become someone I'd never be. Like my very existence was an inconvenience. Meanwhile, Danielle, oh, she could do no wrong. When she skipped class, it was because the teachers didn't understand her creativity. When I got perfect attendance, my mom said, well, that's just the bare minimum, Elise. Danielle got praise, love, even a car when she turned 16. I got lectures and a hand-me-down coat. There's one moment I'll never forget. I was 13. I'd worked for weeks on a school science fair project, late nights, saved up money for supplies, and even convinced our neighbor, a retired chemist, to lend me his lab coat for presentation day. I came home that night with the first place ribbon, clutching it in my hand, heart bursting with hope. I walked into the kitchen where Mom was folding laundry. I won, I said, holding the ribbon up like it was proof that I mattered. She didn't even look up. That's nice, Elise. Can you set the table? That was it. No smile. No hug. Not even a glance. Later that evening, Danielle came home crying because her boyfriend hadn't texted her back. Mom dropped everything. She wrapped her in a blanket, made her hot cocoa, and sat with her for hours. That was the night I stopped trying to win her approval. At 13, I started to build a little world inside myself where her words couldn't touch me. I stopped telling her about my achievements. I stopped looking to her for validation. I focused on school. I volunteered at the local clinic. I stayed up late reading medical journals online because I didn't just want to succeed, I needed to disappear into something bigger than the pain. By senior year, I had straight A's and acceptance letters to 3 universities. But when I showed my mom the one I wanted, State University's pre-med program, where I'd gotten a partial scholarship, she said something that scorched itself into my memory forever. She looked at the letter, then back at me and said, "Why would you waste time pretending to be something you're not? You'll drop out like everything else. You're not like Danielle." That was the moment I realized she didn't just overlook me. She truly believed I would never become anything. She never said congratulations. Never asked how I planned to pay for it. She just shook her head and muttered, "You're going to be our problem forever." Our problem. Like I was some kind of financial or emotional disease that would never go away. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just nodded, turned around, and went to my room. That night, I applied for 3 part-time jobs. I accepted the scholarship. And 2 weeks later, I packed my bags and left. She didn't even come to the door to say goodbye. I walked down the front steps with a duffel bag, a cheap second-hand laptop, and $127 in my checking account. Danielle was in the living room painting her nails. My mother was folding laundry. Again. No one stopped me. No one said good luck. But deep down, something inside me whispered, "You'll come back someday." Not for revenge. Not to prove a point. But because they'll finally see what they were too blind to recognize. And that whisper? It kept me going when things got dark. College was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Not because of the classes, those I could handle. I loved the human body, the science of healing, the quiet order of biology and anatomy. It was the loneliness that crushed me some nights. The kind that seeps in when no one calls, when you sit alone in a noisy cafeteria, pretending you're busy so people don't see you eating by yourself. I worked 3 jobs, front desk at a community clinic, tutoring chemistry, and waitressing weekends at a diner that paid in cash. I lived in a basement apartment with a leaky ceiling and mold behind the fridge. I stretched peanut butter sandwiches across 3 days. Every dollar counted. Every hour mattered. But I never asked for help. Especially not from home. Danielle, on the other hand, had switched majors twice, dropped out for a semester to find herself, and still got a monthly stipend from my mother. I knew because every once in a while Mom would send me a text by mistake, meant for Danielle, asking if she got the deposit. When I'd reply wrong person, she wouldn't even say sorry. 4 years went by like that. Slowly, I pieced together a life that was mine. I earned my bachelor's, then scraped my way into medical school, this time with scholarships and grants. Still poor. Still alone. But something inside me had shifted. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was building. Then came the call. It was a cold Wednesday evening around 10. I had just finished an overnight shift at the hospital, bleary-eyed and sore, when my phone buzzed. It was my mother. I stared at her name on the screen, heart pounding. She hadn't called me in over 2 years. For a second, I thought something was wrong. Maybe she needed help. Maybe Danielle had an accident. I answered. Her voice was sharp and patient, just like always. Elise, she said. No, hello. No, how are you? Danielle's wedding is next month. She wants you to help pay for the dress. I blinked. What? She sighed like I was the one being difficult. She picked out a beautiful Vera Wang, but she's a little short on cash. You make good money now, right? It's only fair you pitch in. I didn't know whether to laugh or hang up. I said, you haven't asked me how I'm doing in years and now you're calling for money? For Danielle's dress. She snapped, don't be so dramatic. Your family. Family helps each other. I swallowed the heat in my throat. You mean like when I was eating expired cereal for dinner? When I was cleaning toilets at midnight and you couldn't even send a good luck text? She went quiet for a beat. Then, that was your choice, Elise. No one told you to be a martyr. And there it was. The final insult. All my struggle, all my sacrifice, reduced to some self-righteous performance. I said calmly, I won't be sending any money. And I won't be coming to the wedding either. Her tone turned icy. You know what your problem is? You think the world owes you something just because you chose to be difficult. You've always been the burden. And you still are. She hung up. I just stood there in the parking lot, breath fogging in the cold, staring at the black screen in my hand. I should have cried. Should have felt broken. But I didn't. I felt clean. That night, I made a promise to myself. That would be the last time she ever got to call me a burden. From now on, I would move forward and I wouldn't look back. Not for her. Not for Danielle. Not for the version of me that still craved their approval. No more. From that point on, I poured everything into my future. I took extra rotations. Learned the business side of healthcare. Shadowed the hospital's finance director on weekends. I didn't just want to be a good doctor, I wanted to build something of my own. And slowly I did. First a small clinic in a quiet neighborhood. Then a second one across town. Within 5 years, I had a growing network of private care facilities. I partnered with passionate doctors, offered affordable treatment options, and reinvested everything I earned into expanding access to care. No press. No social media spotlight. Just steady, honest work. I never changed my name. Never changed my number. But they never called again. Until the day everything came full circle. There's a certain kind of power that comes from being underestimated. People leave you alone. They don't see you coming. And when you finally rise, they're too busy looking in the other direction to stop you. That was the quiet advantage I carried with me after that call. While Danielle posted her bridal shower photos and my mother hosted wine parties for family friends, I was learning how to read balance sheets, sitting in hospital board meetings even when I wasn't invited, just observing, absorbing. I knew I couldn't just be a doctor. Not if I wanted real change. Real control. I needed to understand the business behind healthcare, who made the decisions, who signed the checks, who got to say, yes, we'll treat this patient, or no, your insurance doesn't qualify. So while most of my classmates focused on specialties, I split my time between medicine and management. I earned an administrative fellowship at a large private hospital, one of the best in the state, and that's where everything shifted. Dr. Vincent Morrow, the CEO, was the first person to actually see me. He said, you don't just want to treat patients. You want to change the system. I nodded. And he gave me a chance. He let me shadow his meetings, review expansion plans, sit with compliance officers, and shadow mergers. I took every opportunity. I listened more than I spoke. And when I spoke, I made sure it mattered. By 30, I'd saved enough to open my first clinic. It was small, just 6 exam rooms and a part-time staff, but it was mine. I called it Monroe Medical, and I made a promise to myself that every patient who walked through those doors would be treated with dignity, whether they could afford it or not. It wasn't glamorous. I still worked night shifts at the local ER to keep things afloat. I drove a beat-up sedan with no ASC and lived in a studio above a bakery that smelled like burnt sugar every morning. But every dollar I earned, I poured into that clinic. Within 18 months, it was profitable. Within 3 years, I had 2 more locations. One in a rural area, one in an underserved part of the city. I brought on trusted colleagues, hired staff who shared my values, and invested in tech that made care more efficient, faster diagnostics, virtual consultations, mobile care units. Patients came. Word spread. Not through billboards or TV ads, but through families. Through trust. And still, I never reached out to my mother. Never sent a card. Never made a dramatic speech. Because I wasn't building this to prove her wrong. I was building it to prove me right. But there were moments when the old ache returned, especially around the holidays. Watching commercials with warm families. Seeing mothers and daughters laugh in the park. That gnawing little voice would whisper, would it have been different if you were more like Danielle? Then I'd look around my clinic at the staff laughing in the break room, at the patient who left a handwritten note saying we saved her life, and I'd remember, I was exactly who I was meant to be. Over time, Monroe Medical grew into Monroe Health Partners. I formed partnerships with nonprofit orgs. We bought an old hospital on the edge of town and rebuilt it from the ground up, modern, efficient, kind. That was always the word I came back to, kind. People think strength is cold, detached. But I've found the opposite to be true. Strength is staying soft in a world that's tried to harden you. Strength is building something with compassion after being raised in cruelty. By the time I turned 35, we had 5 medical centers, 2 urgent care units, and contracts with over 100 primary care providers across the state. I rarely spoke publicly. I never gave interviews. My name wasn't printed across buildings. I preferred the back office, the strategic table, the world where decisions were made. And in all that time, not once did I hear from my mother. Not a single text. Not a question about where I was, what I had become. Maybe she still thought I was working night shifts at a local clinic. Maybe she didn't think of me at all. And honestly, I had made peace with that. Until the phone rang again. It was a weekday. Late afternoon. I was reviewing expansion proposals with my chief operations officer when my assistant knocked on the door. There's a call you might want to take, she said gently. I glanced up. Who is it? She hesitated. Judith Monroe. Says she's your mother. For a second I froze. That name. That voice I hadn't heard in years. It didn't bring warmth. Just a tightness in my chest. A flicker of memory. I took a breath, nodded, and picked up the phone. Her voice was smaller this time. Frail. Elise, she said. I didn't know who else to call. They rushed me to the hospital. Some kind of heart thing. Chest pain. Danielle's out of the country and well, they brought me to this place. Monroe Health. I think it's called. She paused. Does that have anything to do with you? I didn't speak right away. I just stared out the window, watching cars pass below, thinking about the girl who once begged this woman to notice her. And now here she was, asking for help from the very person she cast aside. It was time. If Elise's story is speaking to you so far, take a moment to tap the like button. It helps more people find stories like this. And we'd love to hear your voice in the comments. Have you ever been underestimated by someone close to you? Make sure you're subscribed and have the notification bell on so you don't miss how this powerful journey unfolds. I didn't answer her right away. There was too much weight in the silence, 10 years of absence, of insults, of being ignored. And now suddenly my name meant something. Not because she missed me. Not because she'd changed. But because she needed something. Still, I took a slow breath and said yes. Monroe Health is mine. She let out a soft gasp. Yours. A beat. Then I didn't know. They brought me in through the emergency wing. The nurse said it was one of the best hospitals in the city. I didn't realize. I cut her off gently. You're in good hands. I'll make sure you get what you need. And I meant it. Because this wasn't about vengeance. This was about closure. I hung up without another word and leaned back in my chair. For a moment, I let the moment wash over me. I had always imagined this scenario in some far-off future, where maybe she'd see my name on a building or overhear a conversation about her, disgraced, daughter who somehow built something. But I never thought it would be this personal, this immediate. Her life, her health now quite literally under my care. I stood, smoothed my blazer, and walked out to the hallway. Send my file to the East Wing, I told my assistant. And let Dr. Franklin know I'll be observing the cardiac unit for the next few hours. When I arrived, I didn't go directly to her room. I moved through the hospital the way I always did, checking in with the nursing staff, reviewing rounds, speaking softly to the on-call teams. No one knew the history I carried. To them, I was Dr. Monroe, the founder. The quiet woman who made sure patients were treated like people, not statistics. Eventually, I made my way to her room. She was sitting upright, wearing one of our soft gray hospital gowns, the kind I insisted we offer instead of the scratchy paper-thin ones I used to hate as a med student. Her hair was thinner than I remembered. Her face looked smaller, too, drawn in, almost tired of carrying its own judgment. When she saw me, she blinked. Elise. I nodded, standing just inside the door. She looked down, fidgeting with the edge of the blanket. I didn't expect to see you. I didn't think. You didn't think I'd amount to anything, I finished for her. She flinched. Just slightly. No, she said. I guess I didn't. It was strange, hearing her say it out loud. No excuses. No pretending. Just truth, bare and raw. But I was wrong, she added, her voice nearly a whisper. I didn't move closer. I didn't offer warmth. Not yet. You'll be here for 2 nights while we monitor your heart, I said, professional. Calm. We've assigned you one of our best cardiologists. Dr. Singh will oversee your care. She nodded, swallowing hard. They said this place saved my life. The staff, they're kind. Efficient. I can't believe you built all this. I didn't need to respond. The evidence was all around us. The quiet beeping of machines. The polished floors. The floral arrangements in the corner. The framed artwork from local schools in the hallway outside. Every detail was part of a world I had created, not to impress her, but to heal people like me. She looked up at me again. I suppose you want me to say I'm sorry. I tilted my head slightly. Do you mean it? She opened her mouth. Closed it. Then said nothing. I nodded. That's what I thought. I turned to leave, then paused. I'm not here to punish you, Mom, I said, without looking back. I'm here because I made a promise a long time ago. That if I ever got the chance to do good in this world, I would. Even for the people who didn't believe in me. I walked out before she could respond. Back in my office, I sat alone in the quiet. No victory music. No applause. Just me and the version of myself that used to cry in the dorm showers, wondering if I'd ever be enough. And now? I was more than enough. Not because she finally saw it, but because I no longer needed her to. The next morning, I returned to her room. She was sitting quietly, staring out the window at the hospital courtyard below. The sunlight spilled in across her bed, illuminating the lines in her face, the same face that once turned cold every time I walked into a room. I knocked softly before entering, even though the door was open. She turned. You came back. I nodded and stepped inside. I told you we'd monitor you for 2 days. I keep my word. She gave a weak smile, the kind people give when they don't know how to start a conversation. There was an awkward silence between us. She looked down at her hands. I asked one of the nurses about you, she said finally. They didn't know we were related. They said you're the reason this hospital even exists. That without you, a lot of patients wouldn't have anywhere to go. I said nothing. They talked about you with so much respect. I sat in the chair beside her bed and folded my hands. That respect wasn't handed to me. I earned it. Every hour. Every failure. Every night I stayed up building this place while everyone else was busy telling me I couldn't. She nodded slowly, her eyes distant. I didn't think you'd forgive me, she said quietly. I haven't, I replied, my voice calm. But I also haven't come here to get even. I'm not here to shame you or make you beg for absolution. She looked surprised. Then why? Because I needed to see it, I said. I needed to stand in front of you, not as your disappointment, not as the girl you called a burden, but as the woman who built the walls around you. I needed to see you here in this bed, vulnerable and unsure, so I could finally understand. I never needed your approval to begin with. That landed like a stone in the room. She blinked, her mouth slightly open. I don't know what to say. I shook my head gently. You don't have to say anything. She closed her eyes. I was a terrible mother to you. It was the first honest thing she'd said since I walked in yesterday. Yes, I replied. You were. I favored Danielle. I pushed you away. I don't even know why. Her voice cracked. It wasn't that you weren't good enough. It was that I was afraid. You were so determined, so different from me. I couldn't control you, and I didn't understand you. I sat still, letting her words settle. You made me feel like I was always in the way, I said. Even as a child, I felt like I had to apologize for existing. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't reach for her hand. I can't take it back, she whispered. And I wouldn't blame you if you never wanted to see me again after this. That's not why I'm here, I said. She looked up. I didn't come to your bedside for closure. I've already made peace with what you did. I came here to remind myself of who I am now, and who I'll never be again. Her chin trembled. What do you mean? I stood slowly. I'm not the girl who begs for scraps anymore. I don't chase love that comes with conditions. I built something from nothing and I did it without you. That's what I needed to know, that even after all the silence, all the shame, I still became someone. I looked her in the eyes one last time. Your recovery is in good hands. Dr. Singh will make sure of it. And when you're discharged, the social worker will help coordinate your care. You won't have to worry about the bill. It's covered. She shook her head. Elise, I don't want your charity. It's not charity, I replied. It's dignity. Something you never gave me, but I'm giving to you. Because I won't become what you were. That's the real difference between us. And with that I walked out of the room. Down the hallway I passed nurses and residents, some nodding respectfully, others waving. My footsteps felt lighter than they had in years. Not because I'd won, but because I no longer needed to. That was the moment of truth. Not hers. Mine. And I was finally free. The next few days passed quietly. My mother remained in the hospital for observation. Dr. Singh and the cardiology team adjusted her medications, ran stress tests, and confirmed she'd likely had a mild cardiac event. Nothing fatal, but serious enough to be a wake-up call. I didn't visit again. I didn't need to. I had said everything I needed to say. And for once she had heard me. That was enough. But the fallout still lingered. Not in my hospital, not in my work, but in the silent corners of my mind. In the memories I didn't invite, but that surfaced anyway. Her words, her dismissal, the years of being invisible in my own home. They came back not with anger, but with clarity. I wasn't bitter. I was exhausted. Not from the confrontation, but from carrying it for so long. That's what people don't talk about. The weight of unresolved pain. It sits inside you like a second skin, until one day you confront the source, and realize it was never yours to carry in the first place. She didn't break me, but she shaped the way I saw myself for far too long. And now I was finally choosing to see myself through a different lens. One morning after her discharge paperwork had been signed, the hospital's social worker stopped by my office. She asked if she could see you before she left, the woman said, hesitating. Said she had something she wanted to give you. I shook my head. Please tell her I wish her well, I said. But there's nothing left that I need from her. The social worker gave a soft nod. I'll pass that along. And just like that, the last open door gently closed. She left the hospital quietly. No dramatic scenes. No final pleas. Just silence. And that strangely felt right. For so many years I thought closure would come from a tearful apology, or some poetic moment where she finally admitted everything she'd done wrong. But that's the thing about real healing. It's quieter than we expect. Sometimes it looks like choosing not to return the call. Sometimes it's letting someone go, without needing them to understand why. That evening I stood alone in the main hallway of Monroe Health. The lights were dimmed for the night, the nurses settling into their shifts. I walked past the front desk, where one of the newer receptionists was chatting with a family member of a patient. She's the founder, I heard the receptionist say softly, pointing in my direction. That's Dr. Monroe. The woman turned to look at me. Her eyes lit up. You built all this? She asked, awe in her voice. I smiled gently. I had a lot of help. But yes, it started with me. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Thank you. My husband's in room 206. The care here. It's the first time I haven't felt scared in months. I nodded. That's why we're here. As she walked away, I stood there in the stillness. Not needing recognition. Not needing revenge. Just present. Whole. And in that moment I knew something with absolute certainty. I had broken the cycle. I had not become the cold woman who raised me. I had not let the hurt twist me into someone cruel. I had found success, yes, but more importantly I had found peace. People always say forgiveness is about the other person, that it's a gift you give them. But I don't agree. Forgiveness, true forgiveness, is about reclaiming your life. Refusing to let pain define you. Choosing who you want to be, no matter what they did. I hadn't given my mother my heart again. I hadn't invited her back in. But I had let go. And in that letting go I made room for joy. For love. for everything that had been waiting for me on the other side of grief. And I didn't need her to see it, because I could finally see it for myself. The morning after my mother left the hospital, I opened the blinds in my office and let the sunlight pour in. It was quiet, just the gentle hum of the city outside and the muffled footsteps of early shift nurses down the corridor. For the first time in years I felt still. Not numb, not guarded, just still. Something had shifted inside me. Not dramatically, not with fireworks, but like the final click of a lock turning, something long jammed now sliding into place. I was no longer trying to prove anything to anyone, not to my mother, not to Danielle, and not to the shadow of the girl I used to be, the one who begged for attention and twisted herself into knots to earn crumbs of love. I was done with that chapter. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself back into the rhythm of work, not to distract myself, but because I finally had space to enjoy it. I sat in on patient evaluations. I joined strategy meetings with my leadership team. I laughed with the front desk staff and brought coffee for the night shift just because I wanted to. Monroe Health continued to grow. We signed a new partnership with the Regional Mental Health Network. We opened a wellness center focused on preventative care for seniors. And I finally approved plans to break ground on a women's clinic, something I dreamed of since my residency. People began to ask for interviews. Local press, medical journals, even a national women in business podcast wanted to feature my story. But I declined every single one, because the only audience I had ever wanted to reach already heard me. I had reclaimed my own voice. One Thursday afternoon, I stopped by our smallest clinic, the one where it all began. I hadn't been back in months. The building still had that faint scent of old books and disinfectant, with worn tile floors and a chipped bench in the lobby. But it was clean, loved, alive. A nurse recognized me as I walked in. "Dr. Monroe," she called. "Do you have time to see someone?" I looked over at the woman sitting near the entrance, middle-aged, worn down, with eyes that looked too tired for her age. She clutched a paper folder, medical forms spilling from the edges. "She doesn't have insurance," the nurse whispered. She said she didn't know where else to go. I walked over and sat beside her. "Hi, I'm Elise," I said gently. "How can we help?" She looked startled. "You're the doctor?" I nodded. She took a shaky breath. "I haven't seen a doctor in 5 years. I'm scared. I've been having these chest pains and I thought it was just stress, but now." She trailed off. I placed my hand over hers. "You came to the right place. We'll take care of you." Her eyes welled with tears. "But I can't pay." "I didn't ask if you could." That moment reminded me exactly why I started all this. Not for money, not for prestige, but for her. For all the people who had nowhere else to go. For the daughters like me, overlooked, undervalued, and dismissed before they ever had a chance to bloom. As she was taken back for her initial screening, I stood there in that small, humble clinic and felt proud. Not loud billboard on the highway proud. Quiet, grounded, soul-deep proud. I had built something lasting. And more than that, I had become someone lasting. That night, I went home, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat on my balcony overlooking the skyline. The city lights sparkled below, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was on the outside looking in. I was part of it. I belonged to myself. And in this new normal, this life I had carved out brick by brick, I was no longer the girl called a burden. I was Elise Monroe, doctor, founder, leader, and daughter of no one's expectations but my own. Sometimes I walked through the halls of my hospital late at night. No clipboard. No schedule. No one expecting anything from me. I just walk. Quietly. Listening to the gentle sounds of machines and the occasional soft murmur from a nurse behind a desk. The world feels different in those hours, slower, softer. Honest. That's when I think the most about where I've come from. I think about that girl, the one who packed a duffel bag at 18 with $127 in her bank account and no one at the door to say goodbye. The one who cried herself to sleep in a freezing basement apartment, eating instant noodles and wondering if she'd made a huge mistake. I wish I could go back and sit beside her. Not to give her advice, but just to tell her, you're not wrong for wanting more. You're not wrong for asking for love. You're not wrong for walking away. I used to believe healing meant reconciliation. That peace required closure from the ones who hurt us. But I've learned something far more powerful. Peace isn't something they can give you. Peace is what you claim when you stop chasing their apology. My mother never truly apologized. Not in the way people imagine. There was no grand scene, no embrace with swelling music. And maybe that's what makes this story different from the fairy tales we're taught to hope for. But in real life, healing isn't always poetic. Sometimes it's practical. Sometimes it looks like saying no to the meeting you don't need, the call you don't know, the weight you no longer carry. Sometimes healing is a boundary, not a bridge. And for me, the real triumph wasn't that she ended up in my hospital. It wasn't the twist. It was that when she looked at me in that hospital room, expecting the same daughter who once begged for crumbs of affection, I wasn't there. That version of me no longer existed. I didn't rise to prove her wrong. I rose because I was right to believe in myself. I rose because I stopped waiting for someone else to give me permission to live. Now, years later, I look around at what I've built, this network of clinics and hospitals, this team of people who believe in kindness and dignity as much as I do, and I realize something else. The most beautiful revenge is no revenge at all. It's success without spite. It's joy that doesn't require validation. It's choosing to build something better not because of the pain, but despite it. I still get messages from people who knew my family. Old neighbors. Distant relatives. Some of them say they always knew I'd go far. Others ask if I've reconnected with Danielle or if my mother and I have patched things up. I usually just smile and say, I'm doing well. Because what they're really asking is, does the story have a happy ending? And the truth is yes. But not because she changed. Because I did. My story's happy ending isn't about revenge or apologies. It's about reclamation. It's about becoming the person I needed when I was young. It's about creating a life where no one else's approval defines my worth. And it's about leaving a legacy not of resentment, but of impact. Every patient we serve, every mother who walks into our women's clinic afraid but hopeful, every young girl who sits in the waiting room dreaming of something bigger, that is my ending. Or maybe it's my beginning. So if you're listening to this right now and you've ever been called a burden, if someone made you feel small for dreaming too big, if they laughed when you walked away, told you you'd never make it, or acted like your worth was conditional, I want you to remember this. You don't need to prove them wrong to be right. You don't need their blessing to start. You don't need their apology to heal. You need only one thing, to believe that your story is still yours to write. And when the day comes when you look around and realize you've built something meaningful, something beautiful, something true, you'll smile quietly and say, I made it. And I did it without becoming what hurt me. That's not just healing. That's freedom. If this story touched something deep in you, if you've ever been overlooked, dismissed, or called a burden, leave a comment below. Your voice matters here. And if you believe in stories that bring justice, healing, and quiet strength, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you never miss another one. Sometimes the best revenge is peace. And sometimes telling your story is the first step toward finding it.